English is the official language of over 60 sovereign states, 21 located in Africa, 13 in the Caribbean, 11 in Oceania, 4 in Asia, 2 in Europe, and 1 in North America. For the past couple decades, bilingual education has been controversial and a hot topic for American education. But before we dive into its two sides, first we must look into its background. It started in 1968, when the Bilingual Education Act passed to help poor Mexican-American children become fully literate in English. Its expected transition time between learning their native language and English was about 3 years. For the 2008 to 2009 school year, there were about 5.3 million English language learners in the U.S. The estimated cost for the 5.3 million is between $1 billion to $4 billion a year. In 2009, the Census Bureau survey showed that 35 million U.S. residents over 5 years of age speak Spanish at home. In 2010, the Bureau showed America has the second largest Hispanic population in the world at 50.5 million. Hispanic students make up for a quarter of the nation's public school enrollment, and they are the fastest growing. Hispanic students have historically underperformed non-Hispanic whites in American schools. In 2011, the National Assessment of Educational Progress by the Department of Education showed that 18% of Hispanic fourth graders were proficient in reading, as compared with 44% of white fourth graders. This has led to problems for Hispanics in the workforce. Meet Chad. Chad grew up in a stable neighborhood. Chad speaks English. Chad went to high school. He is on the honor roll. Chad received a scholarship to Penn State. Chad lives on campus, therefore he is broke. Meet Jennifer. Chad and Jennifer decide to get coffee. Shortly after coffee, they get engaged. Chad and Jennifer graduate at the same time. They lease an apartment and get a dog named Maggie. Meet Jose. Jose is a predominant Spanish speaker. Jose goes to the same high school as Chad. He is struggling and is a D average student. Jose graduates from high school but has limited options. Jose is at home. His mom is at work. She comes home from work only to yell at Jose. Jose decides to get his life together, so he attends a community college. Chad finds a job within 1 month of graduating. For Jose, a whole year goes by before he's able to find a job. Due to his fluency in English, Chad lands an executive position in a corner office. Jose hits a glass ceiling due to his language barrier. Chad gets a promotion. Jose works in a cubicle. Chad is now Jose's CEO. The end. There are 4 types of bilingual education. The first is standard bilingual education, which is when information is presented to the students in more than one language. The second is called submersion. This is when a student is placed in an English-speaking classroom with native English speakers, regardless of the student's level of proficiency in English. The third is called two-way bilingual education. This is when fluent or native speakers of both English and another language are placed in the same classroom and instructed in both languages alternately. Note, this is the most effective and implemented for several years or more. The final one is English as a second language. This is when non-English speaking students are placed in English-speaking classrooms for part of the day. The other part of the day is spent in another classroom with an ESL teacher to receive individual and concentrated instruction learning English. 3 states have made definite efforts to incorporate bilingual education into their system. Texas is one of those states, due to its high ratio of Hispanics. From 1998 to 2010, the number of English learners in Texas jumped from 15% to 40%. In 2010, 20% of early childhood education teachers were cut. Because of this, in 2011 to 2012, the funding for the bilingual programs unfortunately fell from $1.2 billion to $950 million. Now let's talk to somebody who has had a first-hand experience with the Texas education system.
My name is Giovanni Thibodeau, and I'm from DeSoto, Texas, which is about 15 minutes outside of Dallas. I am Black, and the high school that I attended in Texas was predominantly Black and Hispanic. In my hie school, we did have classes that were directed towards students whose first language was Spanish. Some of those classes included ESL, which was a course that would teach Spanish-speaking students the proper way to speak Spanish, as though American students are taught the proper way to speak English. I don't feel as though Spanish-speaking students were segregated from English-speaking students because they did have the same curriculum. They were in the same classes that I was in, for the exception that they had ESL classes. I'm indifferent about being bilingual because as an American, not being only speaking English, I'll find a job, but if I was bilingual, my job opportunities would broaden a lot more because of the career choice that I'm choosing, which is architectural engineering.
Currently, Illinois leads the country in bilingual education. It was the first to require bilingual preschool programs. It passed HB 3819, which made the State Advisory Council evaluate the success of the bilingual programs in August 2012. They also explored parent academies to increase participation of parents with children whose first language is not English. Colorado is another state that has just recently become accustomed to bilingual education. Denver Public Schools passed an agreement in November 2012 on a plan to teach English to immigrant students. 30,000 Denver public students do not speak English, and 90% of those are Latino. The agreement mandates that schools offer bilingual classes, provide adequate training for teachers and principals, and establish a system to monitor students' progress over the next 3 years. Now let's get another perspective on bilingual education.
Hi, I'm Christine. Could I have your name and hometown?
I'm Allison Wiley, and I'm from Happy Valley, Oregon.
What was your exposure to native Spanish speakers in Oregon?
My junior year of high school, I was in a Hispanic culture and communications class, and we spent one day a week teaching in a bilingual elementary school. And so we would go in for an hour and help the kids become more proficient in reading.
How exactly did you help them become proficient?
Well, often their struggle is at home. The parents only speak Spanish, but school is all English speaking. So if they have homework in English, their parents can't help them, and that's when they start to fall behind in a traditional school system. I worked at Vos Elementary, and they open with the intention to help kids who have this issue. Their goal is to teach the kids how to read in Spanish first, and then from there they learn to read in English. So we help the younger students with their basic Spanish skills, and then the older ones read aloud to us in English.
What do you think about bilingual education?
I think the idea behind it is good because a lot of times there's no way for them to get help from their parents with learning English if the parents only speak Spanish. I think the statistic they gave us was that only 10% of the students' parents could speak English at all. Teaching two languages at one time isn't optimal. Our approach of becoming more proficient in Spanish first and then working on English is more beneficial to them as a student than trying to learn both at the same time.
Finally, let's discuss the pros and cons. First, the pros. Bilingualism has been shown to improve brain function, specifically improving multitasking ability and allowing the cognitive system to pay better attention to important information. Next, the economic well-being of society depends on maintaining a literate population with the academic capability for higher education and skilled jobs. Lastly, when bilingual education was introduced, the Hispanic dropout rate dropped from 32% to 15% between 1990 and 2010. Now let's look at the cons. Bilingual education cannot always be funded. There are not enough teachers in some states and areas to accommodate all the students who want to participate. It can result in extended segregation of non-English speaking students. Finally, there is no distinctive research showing that teaching children in their native languages to help them learn either English or other subjects is most proficient. Maybe it's best to ask the kids what they think.
My parents think it's good for me. Know more languages.
Yo me gusta aprender español porque yo quiero aprender otras lenguas.
It's not really teaching, it's really just like being in an environment of everyone's talking Spanish and you just catch on.
It's obvious the kids don't mind. If school systems are willing to put up the money, Bilingual education might just be the best way for this country to move forward. The end.